Has Dan Hurley calmed down as a coach? He's a little more docile? Let's find out on the Hoops Cap.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.
Welcome into the Hoops Cap Pod right here on the Big East Energy Network. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. Before we get rolling, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a 5-star review. Every 5-star review gets read on the air. And today's episode is presented by the law offices of James E. Sulik, experienced criminal and personal injury attorneys serving clients all across Connecticut. If you need legal help, call 860-644-4700. And make sure you tell him Mark from Big East Energy sent you. We've got a great guest today, a guy who knows East Coast hoops, in particular, Big East basketball, tri-state area, better than almost anybody in the business. He's the voice behind the Tri-State College Basketball Podcast. He's plugged in, he's sharp, and he's been tracking Dan Hurley's rise from Wagner to Rhode Island to Stores. Please welcome in my guy, Bryan DeNovellis. Bryan, here you are. All right, we're here with Bryan DeNovellis, Tri-State College Basketball Podcast. Bryan, you know, the thing about this team with UConn in particular, it felt like Dan really is – I had a guest on talk about how he almost feels like he's calmed a little bit. I know that sounds kind of funny, right? Because we see a lot of his histrionics on the sidelines. But, you know, do you agree with that to a certain extent? Like even we saw the game last night against Columbia. They didn't play a really good second half. And right. There was not a lot of chewing out. Like you could just tell that he's kind of tweaking how he reacts to certain things and picking his spots. Does that make sense?
Yes and no, Mark. I'm gonna agree to some extent. Listen, he's still intense, man.
Of course.
Come on, there are some games, that UMass Lowell game, he was fired up. He can still get in your face. And I'm gonna curse if you don't mind. He can still motherfuck you to death. Okay. Yep. He does that. Here's where I think he's changed. I think people around him, I think Andrea, his wife, he's clearly, she's become a pseudo celebrity. I'm sure she's gotten in his face. The talks that he's had with Gino Auriemma. I mean, the Godfather, right? The Pope,
sure.
Whatever you want to call him. It's him and Calhoun. I'm sure Calhoun has gotten in and talked to him. Like, what are you doing to yourself? You're a maniac. You have to tone it down a little bit. So I think we're not seeing a gentler, but we're seeing maybe a little toned down. Maybe he's ratcheted it down when it comes to the officials. And
we'll see. They haven't played anybody yet.
Right. So I think the jury's still out on whether this is a kinder and gentler Dan Hurley. Okay.
Well, it's to your point. You kind of answered the question for me without answering it, because you said, he's picking and choosing his spots, because it's true. Like the UMass Lowell game, he's literally doing this and making sure that no one hears him MF people, right? So we see that, and that's all quintessential Dan. But then last night, my wife was watching the game with me. She typically does, but sometimes she works. So this night she's watching it,
right?
And they had a great first half, and so the second half was really uneven. And there was the first media timeout, and they literally were down 5 points in the second half because they're up 25 at half, and now I think the lead had dropped to 19.
Okay,
and he calls timeout. They didn't pan to him. If he's doing something crazy, Fox is immediately panning to him. Nothing. Come back from the timeout. I expected Fox to be like, oh, this was during the media timeout. Nothing. So he's picking and choosing the spots to explode, because then in the press conference, he talks about his relationship with Silas Demery and how it's contentious.
Right.
Gives a shout out to Joe Fiano about he's going to win the Heisman. So
called him Fasano, which was very funny.
he's still as intense as you say it.
Yeah.
But there's still a part of him, I feel like, that push-pull where he's trying to figure out like how to coach this team. And I that to me is the part that's fascinating.
Mark, we all mature, right? You hope you mature in some aspects, and you learn, especially when you're young and you're a hothead, or you're just, you're all about winning. You and I have communicated a little bit, and I know you have children, right? You got a daughter. maybe you coach them in sports. I'm sure you did, being a former, college tennis player. So when you're young and you coach your kids, right, you coach them differently, at 30 years old or 35 years old than you would at 45. Right. So I think we're seeing Hurley, maybe change his tone a little bit, but listen, he is still going to be, I'm one of his biggest fans. I love his energy. I love his emotion, and he knows this. Okay. Not only do his players feed off of his energy, but the crowd feeds off of his energy. Okay. So let's just hope he doesn't feed into the Creighton crowd energy, and go after somebody and call him Baldy this year. All right. That's what we're going to know if he's changed or not.
I have never been able to have the access that you've had in terms of like actually having an interview with him. So my questions to him are limited to, I have to make them basketball specific. But one of the questions that I would like to ask him is, as a fellow Baldy himself, what are we doing, bro? You and I are in the same, like him and I are in the same boat. Like I haven't let go, and mostly because my wife doesn't want me to shave my head. And why are you messing for a Larry David reference? Why are you messing with the bald community, my friend? Like, what's going on?
Here's my thought on this. And I don't know how many people have talked about this, but he has said publicly, right? And we know this. He's a huge WWE fan.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if he did something with Triple H or whoever it was. Right. He went I think he went to Madison Square Garden one time and was on the WWE pregame, whatever it was. Right. He has publicly said he's a WWE fan. It's a show.
I get it.
Gets that it's a show. And I think, listen, he's as intense as they come. I covered his dad, Bob Hurley, for years in New Jersey here. And I have the utmost respect for them, the Hurley family. But man, Bob Hurley, you don't get great without having some moments where you're yelling at your, and instructing and raising your voice. So I know he knows the cameras are on him, and sometimes I think it's an act, Mark.
I totally agree. All right, let's get into the actual team. If you look at this roster, the true strength of this UConn team, I think, and I think he said this a few times, is in the numbers. I don't feel like they overwhelm you with talent necessarily like the 24 team, but this collection of guys is just, I feel like it's an amalgam of like, you have your guy in Terrace, who's like an Adama Sanogo clone. You have Alex, who's the steady hand. You got Solo, who's playing that, Hawkins, Cam Spencer role. It's the blueprint is kind of back. And how do you feel about this group? Is it similar to any of the title teams? Is it its own standout all around? I know we have a long way to go, but how do you feel about this team coming in?
Great question. I think it's a lot like some of his earlier teams, where some of the parts were greater than the whole. And, he, with Polly and who I forget some of the other bigs that they had.
Oh God, you're gonna put me on the spot, and I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of.
We have to go back to the year before Sanogo got there, maybe Sanogo's freshman year. What I'm trying to say is Whaley and Polly, right? These guys were really good college players, and my point is this: I don't know how many true NBA players are on this roster. Probably Braylon Mullins, but we don't know. We haven't seen him yet. Right. He could be Steph Castle, where he sits out a bunch of games and then, becomes the rookie of the year. I don't think Alex Caravan is an NBA player. I just don't. I've been saying it for years. If he was, he would have left. Okay. Maybe he's a two-way player at best. Silas Demery, no. Terrace Reed, I don't think he's an NBA player. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of really good college basketball players here. That's my point. And in terms of the roster depth, I mean, it's as deep as his teams have been. He went back to his old school where he had to get a point guard, right? He had to get, Hassan Diarra, we love him to death, best sixth man, but he wasn't, a star point guard, so Dan knew I have to get me a Tristan Newton type player. And that was a priority. And he went out. I'm not saying Silas Demery is, going to be an All-American like Tristan Newton. I don't believe he has that potential, but He's a very good point guard, and he's a dude, and he does exactly what Dan Hurley wants him to do. He only scored 5 points last night, but he had 9 assists.
9 assists, yeah.
You know, and when you have Solo hitting threes, and you have Caravan hitting threes, and you have Jaden Ross having the phenomenal first half that he did. Listen, man, you don't need to score. You don't need to be the man at Georgia anymore. So,
right.
So, you know, and I love Malachi Smith. I've loved him since high school. Watched him a lot at Dayton. He is, and he came here knowing, Mark, that he's not going to start for the most part. So he accepted his role from day one. And that's a pretty good two-headed monster at point guard. So
yeah,
you know, we haven't seen the best of Ryba either. So there's so many, they can go 10 deep, you know, easily. I know people say that, oh, they're 10 deep. And then by the time the tournament comes around, you're going 7 or 8, but
right. No, that's not the case with this team.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because at Big East Media Day, I actually asked Gino the question of is too many players a good problem? Is that a true statement? Is having too many players a good problem to have for a coach? And his answer was really like, you know, like Gino, like only Gino can give. And I think Dan would probably say something similar, which is, you know, it's everyone thinks on the outside everybody can play. Right. And then you get into practice, and the reality is only about 9 or 10 can. And then how the other 4 or 5 respond to that is whether or not you have an enjoyable season coaching them. Right. And to me, I thought that was really interesting because a team like this, like Alex, like this team that's led by Alex is an interesting case of that. And the two bigs that I feel like you were mentioning before, I cheated a little bit. I looked it up because the guy's name was right on the top of my head. And then he transferred to Houston, which is Josh Carlton. He was a 6'11" kid. And Tyrese Martin, who's now playing really well in Brooklyn, was a part of that team as well with Sonogo's freshman year. But in terms okay, we're taking a very short break to tell you all about our presenting sponsor, the law offices of James E. Sulik. If you're in Connecticut and you need an attorney, you need someone you can actually trust, whether it's criminal defense, personal injury case, maybe it's a misunderstanding, and you're just not sure who to call or what to do about it. So James Sulik, he's a great guy, UConn fan. He goes to games, over 40 years of experience based right in South Windsor. He's built his reputation on doing things the right way, personal attention, real results, and no runaround. I've had multiple conversations with him. We were really trying to get this sponsorship squared away. Probably the easiest bit of negotiation I've ever had to be a part of. And in my 20 plus years of doing anything where sales or salesmanship is involved, Jim was just a phenomenal person to talk to. There's his number. Call today for a free same-day consultation, 860-644-4700. That's James E. Sulik Law. Call Jim and make sure you tell him Mark from Big East Energy sent you. But in terms of this squad, I don't push back necessarily that Alex isn't an NBA player because I've said he's the best fourth option in college basketball history, and I say that with love because when you put Alex on a team that is like this team that has options outside of himself, that's when his true value becomes magnified, right? Right. So I would push back that an NBA team and I'll echo Cam Spencer's brother Pat saying the reason why NBA teams keep losing is they always look for the talented guys, not the guys to help them win. And if you want to help your team win, you draft Alex Caravan and you put him around the talented players, and you watch how that grows. And I believe that, and I think that's a second round pick. Maybe he's a two-way guy, but he can work his way into that. So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, just expand on that a little bit.
I think Alex Caravan, man, if he wins a national championship 3 and 4 years, right? I mean, he's gonna his number will be retired to the UConn rafters, right? At Gamble. I think he will go down as an all-time great. I'm not going to put him top 5 in the starting 5, but you know, there's so many great players there. He certainly belongs on a list of UConn all-time greats. You know, even if he goes to the Final Four and doesn't win a national championship. Right. A great player, a great teammate, a great Husky. But, again, to be on that NBA level, you have to have elite athleticism. I mean, look at Andre Jackson. What did he do at UConn? He averaged like 6 points, but was a freak of an athlete, and he has found his way onto a roster. Why?
NBA team, yeah.
Because he's a freak of an athlete, and he's not getting a whole lot of minutes, but I don't see that NBA, elite athleticism.
Do you think Cam Spencer's an elite athlete though?
Being able to defend. Oh yeah.
Do you really think he is, huh? I think there's levels to it. I wouldn't put Cam at an elite level of NBA athletes. I think he makes me look like a middle schooler. But I'm saying like at that level,
well, Mac McClung type of NBA athleticism, not elite, nowhere near elite athleticism.
Fair.
But NBA level athleticism, right, Mark?
That's fair.
There's a lot of dudes out there who are
for sure
who are great college players. Great Jimmer Fredette, right? Great college players who just aren't NBA players. And there's no shame in that. It's Seton Hall, Miles Powell, right? A lot of players.
Yeah.
I never thought Kevin Ollie was a great college basketball player, but damn, did he have a nice career in the NBA, longer than most. So I love Alex Karaban. Listen, his shot is back to me, right? Mm-hmm. He struggled mentally last year when he tried to be the man. That's one of the best things I've heard someone say, like the best fourth option. I think on this team, he can be the one option on any given night, but he can also be, the second or third option, depending on how Solo is running and Terrace is running.
And also what I mean by that is that doesn't mean that he's not going to, he may end up leading them in scoring this year. Like what I mean by that is when you're going, if they're playing BYU this weekend, this may come out before that, and this may come out a couple days after that. But when they play a team that is specifically looking at film of this team, their first question is not going to be, we have to shut down Alex Karaban. They're going to worry about him to a certain extent, but they're going in other directions. They're trying to stop Solo. They're trying to stop Terrace. And when that happens, Alex becomes immensely more valuable because of all the little things he does. His, being able to slip to the hoop like he did in the 23-24 team that was so dominant that beat Purdue. His ability to kind of fade on these little actions that they run for him for 3-pointers. Like those are things that those little intricacies that I know Dan loves and the team loves with him. And I can see him doing that at the next level, but I do take your point at, for what it's worth, that he may not have that same X factor mentality in the NBA that he has in college, because that's a fair point.
He does. I hope he does make it, but he's definitely, we agree that he's a tweener.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, totally. Totally.
Yeah. We agree on that. One of the best compliments, you talk about options. I don't know the Columbia coach's name, right? First year head coach, was an assistant coach last year at Florida. I was reading Dave Borges's article, and Dave is great. The longest tenured UConn writer, and the Columbia coach said, "Man, I thought UConn was great last year. They're great this year. The sets that they run are so complicated that you can't take everything away. Right? You're going to have to concede something, and you hope that doesn't kill you." That's basically what he said. So that's a compliment to Hurley, to Luke Murray and this staff that the players buy in to what the coaching staff is doing. And this team is just, they're a team. They're a team.
For sure. That's Kevin Hovde, former assistant at Florida, and now the first year head coach at Columbia that you were referencing. Who do you think is the biggest X factor for this team? Is it someone already in the rotation? Saw Jay Stu, Jay Ross, who've both been solid. Yeah. Or could it be one of the newcomers? You mentioned Braylon, who we haven't seen, or Jacob Furphy, who we've seen in little bits. Or are you talking about a situation where it's all about depending on matchup?
I can't wait to see Braylon Mullins. I really can't.
Same.
Is he Liam McNeely? Is he Steph Castle? Can he live up to that hype and win another Big East Rookie of the Year? I think the X factor is still out there. And when he does come in, how does he fit into this team that is so established, right? So that's going to be interesting to me. But at the same point, right now, Mark, the way this team is right now with the players out there, I think it's any given night. Last night we saw Jaden Ross, right, have an unbelievable first half, 3 for 3 from 3, 10 points, and that really opens things up, right? Shooting is contagious. You saw Ball hit threes, you saw Caravan hit threes, Ross 3 for 3, and then in the second half, he had more fouls than points, right?
That's right.
Ended up fouling out and stayed with 10 points. But for the first half, at least, he was the X factor.
No, I agree. And, we talked about a little bit about joking around about how Dan is a big wrestling fan. We actually do have a Braylon Mullins inspired and his dad approved a t-shirt that we are actually selling on BigEastEnergy.com called Mullins Mania. And every dollar of that goes to the Connecticut Boys and Girls Club, our partner in the state of Connecticut. So it's scrolling across the screen, BigEastEnergy.com, products/Mullins Mania. It's a really cool shirt. It looks just like the WrestleMania logo, but it says Mullins Mania, obviously. We're anticipating Mullins Mania taking over Connecticut as we speak. So I wanted to scroll that across the screen. Last question for you on this. So this team is got a really difficult non-conference schedule. You've covered college sports in the tri-state area and in college athletics since 2021. Do you think, and I believe this, I'm curious what's your thoughts on this. Do you think coaches actually signal how good they believe their teams are by how tough their non-conference is? Because we all know that schedules sometimes are years in advance. So like the home at homes, all the different things that are scheduled out, but those extra games, those added games, they don't typically schedule cupcakes, to reference Dick Vitale.
Yeah.
Like typically, if you feel good about your team, and a coach is saying, "I like my team," they're scheduling these Kansas games, these BYU neutral site games, Florida, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that's a true statement, or you think it's just kind of like perchance?
I think it's a wave, Mark. I really do. Right? Was it the Big 12 last year that had or 2 years ago, they had all these metrics, and because they were wiping out cupcakes by 40 and 50 points, right? So they abused the metrics.
Yep. Sure.
Yeah. So, and I've said this before on my podcast, there were years when John Thompson and Jim Calhoun were scheduling, 10 non-conference cupcakes, and Georgetown was playing Division III, Division II St. Leo, and UConn didn't leave the state of Connecticut for the non-con 1 year. I think it goes in waves. Nate Oates at Alabama, Dan Hurley at UConn. Look at their non-conference schedules. I mean, Alabama is hosting Purdue, less than a week after they were at number 5 St. John's, and I know they have more, games on their schedule. Dan, this is the toughest non-conference schedule I can ever recall for a UConn team. Right. And he loves playing the games at the Garden. So he's going to have number 13 Illinois at the Garden. This number 7 BYU team is going to be great. And that's going to be a fascinating matchup in Boston. And then a few days later, they host number 5 Arizona, who already beat the defending national champs. Yes, I think Dan Hurley and Nate Oates took the page out of the same book and said, you know what? We're a freaking Final Four team. Let's go out. I know the Big East is tough. I know the SEC is brutal, but let's go out and measure ourselves, because that's how I think we're going to be better in March.
Yeah, no, it's so funny you mentioned that's a great answer. You talked about how UConn sometimes didn't leave the state at times. A long time ago, it's probably like coming up on 8 years. I was covering a Wake Forest Duke game down in my adopted state of North Carolina. It was Coach K's last year, no, maybe second to last year, when Zion was there. And very famously, Coach K does not play a lot of non-conference games unless it's a neutral site game. They basically wait until ACC season to play road games, right? And I asked him a question because I was doing a piece on mid-majors and how they literally are all road warriors until they get to conference, and the differences between that. I asked him if he felt like there was a difference in the way his team responded playing on someone's campus versus playing a neutral site game. And man, he did not like that question.
Oh boy.
He editorial. I gave him the opportunity to editorialize. I feel like I do a good job, both positive and negatively, of allowing coaches to editorialize the answers to questions because I give him a lot of leeway.
He got very curmudgeon in his older age, and so defensive. Mark, that was a very fair question. And he knew where you were going.
I'll send you the clip. It's very funny, and I'm very close to him too. So he was just like, "Come on, man."
Wow,
it's just very funny.
But look at the difference now. Like these campus sites, Mark. I mean, Arizona coming to Gamble. How exciting is that for the fans?
Maybe LeBron James. Maybe LeBron James is there because his son plays.
You know what? Maybe.
He's hurt. He's not playing any basketball.
He might need some load management.
Yeah, we'll get him one of those. One of those little cushions when your butt's bothering you because he's got that sciatic. We'll get him a nice sideline seat, and he can sit right next to the fans, and no one will give him any shit. It'll be great. UConn fans are really passive.
Of course not. In 2 years in a row or 2 out of 3, whatever it's been, I'm losing track. But UConn going to Fog Allen. I mean, one of the top 5 arenas in all of college basketball. This is great instead of, these neutral sites on an aircraft carrier. I mean, those are great too, but, go into a hostile environment, a top 10 team at their building, and let's see. I love the fact that it's at Gamble and not, what are they calling now? People's Bank Arena?
People's Bank Arena,
yeah. To me, it's still the Hartford Civic Center, but that's just me. That's just me. So see, I think it's great.
I knew we were going to get along. I'm gonna have to send you a shirt I made. It's literally the floor of the Hartford Civic Center, the old one, the yellow and red.
And HCC.
Yep. Absolutely.
Come on, we were there. I was there, Mark. I just gotta say this. I was there when the Celtics would play 3 games a year. They would play 3 games a year at the Hartford Civic Center. And that shot, they always show it in the Larry Bird clips where he's behind the backboard.
Yes.
At an impossible angle and throws it up over the backboard and it swishes in. I was like 3 rows behind that. Oof. And we went bananas. And the funny thing about that is that they didn't count that because they said it went over the verticality of, the plane of the backboard. Today, in this day and age, they count it. But back then, ironically, it's in all the highlights. But
of course.
Hartford Civic Center, baby.
The Hartford Civic Center. I still catch myself calling it that all the time. Yeah. Tell everyone where they can find your work, and then we'll let you get out of here.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate that, Mark. Appreciate you having me on. Tri-State College Basketball Podcast. You can just look that up. It's the only podcast of its kind, that covers New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut tri-state area. And listen, even if it's Wesleyan men's basketball winning a D3 national championship, I'm going to be talking about them. So, or UConn. So whatever it is, I appreciate it, Mark. And that's where you can find me. Appreciate it.
Love it. Thank you for being on. Great episode with Bryan. That'll do it for us today on the Hoops Gap. Huge thanks again to Bryan DeNovellis for jumping on and bringing the insight. Always appreciate having him on. We make sure you subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Go subscribe to his Tri-State College Basketball Podcast as well. Give him a 5-star review. Give me a 5-star review. Let's get it all squared away and help each other out there. Today's episode was presented by the law offices of James E. Sulik. As always, keep it dialed in right here on the Big East Energy Network, your home for nonstop Big East hoops, 365 days a year. We'll see you on the next one.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby.